September, the game anew, locked in a battle with the chosen few. Argue some ridiculous philosophy, separate the me from me. June brings sweet escape. I'm free like Virginia, mind jump the state. Another realm of servitude, clothed, but my mind is nude. High mountains over endless seas, you'll never reach me. Skyscrapers may trap my mind, but I know that I'm built to fly. I'm built to fly. Yeah. Now I'm to the center of the state. Never really ever graduate. Shackled to the road that leads underground. Chained to the wheel I run around and round. But I'm like dynamite, blast through with a glimpse of light. I rise like Superman, I know where I am. High mountains over endless seas, you'll never reach me. Skyscrapers may trap my mind, but I know that I'm built to fly. I'm built to fly. I'm built to fly. Yeah. I wrote that song because I am obsessed with superheroes. And growing up, I was always watching movies about superheroes. I never really got into comic books, but I always had this idea that I could be a superhero. And I think a lot of women out there understand this whole idea of being a super mom and a superwoman. And I definitely would have, if anybody asked me, I would have said, yes, I am a superwoman. And, I think a lot of us also know, the different ways that superheroes get their superpowers. I don't know if you can think of anything, maybe, throw something out, being bit by a spider, maybe you were born with superpowers. And I had this crazy, crazy, crazy experience that happened to me that I think perhaps qualifies me for having superpowers. In 2013, I was hit by lightning. And I think that most people, it was kind of a joke. People would come up to me afterwards and say, you're still alive? Either they would say, you should totally play the lottery, because I could be very, very rich. Or they would ask, do you have superpowers? And I think they were just, kidding around, obviously. I hope they were kidding around. But after a while of living in a wheelchair and really having my life completely turned around, I started to really ask myself, where are my superpowers? I was just trying to figure out, how can I see the good in what happened to me? And it really launched this inquiry into figuring out what my superpowers were. And if that were the only bad thing that's ever happened, or the only wonky thing that's ever happened in my life, that would be fine. But when I was taking this, this roll call of my life, of this roll call of the things that had happened throughout my life, I was able to identify what I think are 3 of the superpowers that I have been given, perhaps granted, or maybe have just honed. And I want to share them with you because I think maybe they might help you figure out what your superpowers are, too. So I have become a super liver, a super listener, and a super lover. No, that is not what it sounds like, but I will explain later. So being a super liver, I think when I would look back, I think I thought I was a pretty good liver. And I realized actually I was really bad at living. And how to explain that? So when I was growing up, I was raised in Scarborough by a single mom who came from England. She came from Jamaica via England. And when she was growing up, she believed that she had 3 options. She could be a bus driver, a postmistress, or a nurse. I'm not quite sure why back in those days nursing was totally in that vein of things, but for a woman growing up in her time in England, that was the option. If you were a woman of color at that time, you could just be a nurse. And she decided to be a nurse. She never graduated from high school, and she moved to Scarborough in the 60s and created this amazing life for me as a single mom. But she really let's be honest, she really only created 3 options for me as well. I could be a lawyer, a doctor, or an engineer. And I think any immigrant parent or a child of an immigrant family totally gets what I'm saying. Those are your options, and those are the only options. And I always wanted to sing. I was just I loved singing. I knew that that's what I wanted to do with myself. But remember when I was saying I wasn't really a good liver? I just knew how to live for other people, And that's what I did. I did everything I could to make my mom happy. So I was class valedictorian, all-around student. I had 5 jobs in high school, 5 jobs throughout university. When I came here to Carleton, I came to go to Carleton, sorry, the other place. When I came to go to Carleton, I took 2 undergraduate degrees at the same time. I graduated in the same year with undergraduate in law with honors and another one in English literature. And how did I do that? I took night school and summer school, which is the exact same thing that I did all through high school. I just didn't know anything other than trying to please my parents. That was just the only thing I could do. And I had an experience where I went to the hospital for extreme stomach pain, and they found out that I had an ulcer. And the doctor, when he wrote the report, he wrote, "This 15-year-old has a substantial," and he took a ruler out of his desk and underlined it 3 times, ulcer. And he was trying to figure out why I had that. And for me, it was just I don't know, but I still have to just keep doing. I didn't really know how to do anything else other than to do. And the only thing that really stopped that for me was I was taking my master's at Carleton in legal philosophy. Again, nothing to do with music. And I got a phone call from my mom in Scarborough saying that she had been diagnosed with multiple myeloma, which is a cancer of the plasma cells. And, even then I didn't stop. I kept going. I was a TA at Carleton. I was taking my courses. I would drive back to Scarborough every week. I would TA the classes on Monday, drive back to Scarborough, take my mom to kidney dialysis, take her to radiation, come back to Ottawa, do all of the work I had to do for that, and just continued to do that until she finally died. And it took about a year, and I still didn't really wake up to the fact that I still was living for everybody but myself. Until, I got pregnant, got married first. So way to do it. Got to make everybody happy. Then got pregnant 3 months later and had a baby. Could not finish my degree for the life of me. My ulcer was back. It was killing me. And I went to this guru, and I was talking to her, trying to figure out what I should do. And she just kind of gave me this idea. She said, why don't you put it out into the universe and ask the universe what you should do? And I thought she was crazy, but I was the one who'd went to a guru. So, so I said, I'll just try it. And the next morning, I woke up with this overwhelming sense that I would be okay, that no matter what I did, I'd be okay, that if there was a God, if there was a heaven and my mom was in it, she knew that this whole idea that I needed to do what everybody else wanted me to do was not working for me, that I was just more sick than ever before, and that she knew that it would be okay. And if there wasn't a God, I was going to be okay anyways. So no matter what, I'd be okay. And the next morning, this is in the old days. You guys don't know this, but before, if you wanted to like drop out of a class, you had to call the phone system. It was before computers existed, but like they weren't really good. And so I called it, but it turns out you can't drop out of your master's on the phone by pushing a button. So I had to actually make the actual movement to do that, and I got through it, and I called my dad to say that I had dropped out, and he said, well, I can't say that I'm not disappointed, because he has his PhD, and he's a biochemist, and there were all these things that I was no longer going to be if I didn't have my master's. And I said, actually, you could say that you're not disappointed. You could say that you're proud that I have an undergraduate, that I have a daughter, that I'm doing well, I own property, I'm doing well for myself. But he hung up and didn't talk to me for 5 years. And I kind of had to like really see life in a different way. Like I had my mom that wasn't there anymore, my father wasn't there for me. But I had this beautiful daughter and a whole list of things that I wanted to do for myself. So one of the things I had put on this list was that I wanted to learn to play tennis. Like I just wanted to do frivolous things that had no value. That's what, as a 20-something-year-old trying to learn to play tennis, that was that. So I went off and I went to learn to play tennis, and I had an ankle rollover, as one does when they go at things full throttle like I do. And I went to the hospital to be treated, and it turns out that I'm allergic to Advil, but I didn't know. So I ended up back in the hospital in anaphylactic shock, about to die. And they saved me, and when I woke up in the hospital, I realized, geez, life is short. Life is so short. Anything can happen at any time. And that was the day that I realized I want to live. I want to do the things that I want to do. I want to live the life that I want to live, and I want to focus on what makes me happy. And I started to write my own music within that time period, and the music that I wrote that in the couple of weeks after became the music on my first album, which was nominated for a Juno. And I've since been nominated for, I think, 3 Junos, one, helped another person win another. And I've been working in my art and working in my music ever since then. And it's just like, it's the reason why I tell people now, just like, drop out. I know it's not a great thing to say in a college setting, but dropping out means so many different things to in so many different situations. Like, maybe you're a manager, but your dream is to be an accountant. Drop out. Maybe you are thinking of enhancing your life in some other way. It doesn't mean you have to go and like become a painter or a singer or something creative. But there's some dream that you have that perhaps you're not using and utilizing in the way that you really want to. And if you can figure out a way to grab it with all your power and just go for it. And that's what I learned, and that's how I became a super liver. So I also told you about being a super listener. Now, I used to think that I was a really good listener, but I was really good at listening to everybody else. And I think the story from before tells you that. But, I got the sense of that. I really realized that I was really good at listening to everybody else but myself. So in 2013, part of my New Year's resolutions were that I was going to start listening to my intuition. And by June of 2013, I still was not doing that. So when one day I was in the kitchen during a big thunderstorm, I was wiping the counter, and I was really trying to get through things quickly because, as I told you, I'm a super mom and a super woman. So you do. And I don't really know how to describe this or explain it. I don't have an explanation for it, but I heard a voice. And the voice said, "Kellylee, sit down on the couch. Go and sit down on the couch and leave the dishes for later." And I'm like, okay, I'm almost done. I'm just going to finish up here. And not even 30 seconds later, the moment that my hand with the sponge touched the edge of the sink is when lightning hit the roof of my house and came through the pipes and through my body. And it changed my life forever. And I don't even know how to explain how angry I was. Because at the time I was thinking, well, say that's like God's voice or like your inner voice, that kind of inner guidance that I was looking for, whatever. I think that if I'm going to receive inner guidance, it should sound something like, Kellylee, get down on the ground. You're about to be hit by lightning. Like something that I can perhaps take it seriously, Like your life's going to be different forever. Like I never expected that I was going to be in a wheelchair for 5 months, that I wasn't going to be able to cut my food, that I was going to be slurring, have difficulty thinking and speaking, not finding the right word, not even really being able to have a proper conversation with people. Like, my life has changed in so many ways, and I'm still not 100%. I think in that kind of scenario, I want a better warning. Not go sit down on the couch. But I think what came to me from that was that every single time I've ever had an intuition or a feeling to do something, it generally doesn't come as a big voice, It's kind of a sense, like something gentle, like, this idea like, maybe I should take this umbrella today. Big storm, or like, I don't really feel comfortable with this person. It's never the clear, like, a thesis, like a book with like table of contents of like all the reasons why this is not a good decision and what you're about to do. There's just a feeling you have. And I was so good at listening to everybody else's guidance that I wasn't very good at listening to my own. So there's another situation where I got a chance to learn about this new superpower that I've been granted, which is figuring out what that inner voice sounds like to me, what that inner intuition sounds like to me, and learning to listen to it on the small things. Because going to sit down on the couch while you're doing dishes doesn't seem like very much. It's just a very small thing that I could have done for myself, but I didn't do it. But the impact that it has had on my life has been huge. I don't think I want my old life back. I'm happy for what happened because I've learned so much, but I wouldn't wish it on anybody else either. And I really feel like I would much prefer to listen to inner guidance than not listen. So that's my second superpower. And my third superpower, I told you, was about being a super lover. And I also told you that it's not what you think. So learning to be a super lover it's a continuing journey. I would have told you that I love everything. I was like Miss Positive. When I was growing up, my mom had me reading like Norman Vincent Peale's The Power of Positive Thinking, and I was always looking for ways to I would write these things called love lists where I would, look at a space that I was in and think about the things that I loved about the space. If I was having conflict with somebody, I would look for things that I loved about that person to feel better about them. I was really, really good at loving everybody else, but I think you can see a pattern here. Not so good about loving myself. And in 2015, 2 years after the initial injury, which I had never really fully recovered from and still haven't, I was on tour, really going hard at it, trying to make money to make sure that I could take care of my family. Single mom with 3 kids. And I got back home from tour in France with the kids, just went to take a bath, which I would say is very good for you. But when I got up, I fainted and I hit my head, and I got a second brain injury. The first brain injury was the lightning strike. And so this second brain injury brought many of the same old symptoms, but then also new things. And again, my life completely changed. But last time, I toured in a wheelchair. Even though I couldn't hold my microphone, I still was on the road. Even though doctors were writing me to tell me that they thought it wasn't a good idea that I should continue to tour, I still continued to do it because I couldn't think how I would take care of my family and myself without doing it that way. Also, I had never really cultivated this ability to care for myself in the future, thinking ahead at savings or anything like that. It was always just living in the moment and trying to do for everybody else but myself. But this new injury just didn't allow for that kind of kind of viewpoint. I really had to learn how to love myself. And that became, I would say, like the most powerful thing that I did for myself was creating what I called the happy list. And it was all the things that I do or that I knew could help to make me happy. Because I have to tell you, being in bed for a year and not being able to move because of feeling of vertigo, constant headaches, light sensitivity, sound sensitivity, not knowing how you're going to take care of your family, that can be a recipe for not feeling at your best. And so I really had to create these lists of things that I had to accomplish on a daily basis in order to feel good. And so I want to invite you, if you have a phone, to take out your phone and to take out notes. And the reason why I say your phone is because you keep it with you most likely all the time. And you can always go to it. And we don't have a lot of time, but I'd love to, if you could just take a few minutes to go into notes and write down 10 things that you know make you happy. And I'll give you an example of some of the things that are on my list of things that I do. I love baths. So I just know that I love baths and I love bubble baths. So instead of saying like, gee, it would be nice to take a bubble bath occasionally, I take a bubble bath every morning. And it's part of my schedule. I know I love music. I know I love going for walks. So think of the things that you do that make you feel good and start to cultivate your happy list. This happy list is a working document. It can stay with you for the rest of your life. And so if you have a few minutes, start typing away. And I'm just going to ask if you'd be willing to share some of the things from your happy list. Maybe it'll inspire somebody else that's maybe having difficulty thinking of what might make them happy. So, go. And if you had a piece of paper, you can write on the paper too. I'm not against paper. The goal is to have a list. So it's cool because this is a project that I do. I speak in sessions with older people, but also with kids. We've done sessions with kids as early as like kindergarten and in high school. And everybody can think of something for a happy list. It's universal, but it's really funny to hear like what some of those are. So I can tell you like what some of them were on Friday at Immaculata. There were a lot of people who said hugs. It was very interesting. Video games was another big one. This is a group of grade 7 girls. And Netflix was another one, for some of the girls. But it's really interesting to kind of hear like what people come up with. So does anybody feel willing to share a couple entries from their list or all of their list? Oh, first question. How many people found it hard to find 10 things? Was it harder? Like, did you feel like you couldn't find 10 things or you had way more than 10 things? Yeah. How about, what was your reason for not finding 10 things you feel? You couldn't find it. Yeah. It's funny, like, I feel like in the beginning, it can be hard. Like, yeah, what makes me happy? Like, what do I like to do? What do I find fun to do? What do I do for myself? I think that's like a huge question. I think it matters. I think it matters to be able to know what you can turn to. I'm supporting a family member with mental health right now, and one of the things that they have is a list of those things, like when they're in that mood, when they're feeling triggered, that they can go to. And knitting has become a big thing, and playing card games, and finding things that maybe are not necessarily online. Breathing, bubbles. I know ice can help some people. There's so many things that, what can help you at that moment. So now, if you had a hard time adding to that list, maybe some of these things that other people are talking about will help motivate you or, inspire you to add to your list. So who's the first person who'd like to add? Come on in. Or, I'll say whatever you say.
Okay. And I had to keep counting because I just kept going.
Yeah. Some people have a whole list and some have one or two.
Music, walks, the outdoors.
Can everybody hear? Yeah.
Family, yoga, especially the breath, friendships, the sun on my face, a good movie, cooking, and laughing.
Those are really great. You know, I want to ask you, elaborate on family. What about family is good for you?
I guess the security of family.
Yeah. So spending time with them.
Yeah, spending time.
Yeah, and so what I like to do is kind of like to parse it even more. Like, so I say, okay, I love family. I love spending time with family. So then what does that mean? So that means that maybe I want to say, like, I'm going to start to make a regular Sunday meal, you know, so that I can have that family time. And you kind of think, like, what activity can I do to enjoy that? You know, like, I love my friends, so, but I was kind of feeling like, geez, like, I'm not hearing from them enough. So in my calendar, there's a 15-minute slot in the day that I can move around whenever I can find a space for it. And my goal is to not erase it and to use it. And so when that time comes, I'll move the little, because I use my Apple calendar, I move it up, and I call a friend, and I talk to them for 15 minutes, and that's my family and friend time. And I make it an everyday thing, because if I don't schedule it, it's not going to happen. And I kind of ended up doing that with everything. I know I love bubble baths. I love baths. Why am I not doing them every day? And I love the feeling of the hot water against my back. So I put that in my schedule in the morning before my family wakes up. It's one of the last things I do before they wake up. And then I know that I've got that in every day. But before, I was kind of like, gee, it would be nice to have. And maybe if my family bought me bubble bath at Christmas, I was going to use it up. And then when it was done, no more baths. But now I make it part of my day. And it keeps this from bubbling up, you know? So I love it. So who else would be willing to share? Yes.
I really like her list. But
Steal it.
Mine was all the things that I'm lacking in that I love. That it was more like an exercise. I should really look into that. But the one thing I have worked into my schedule is I like to read in the tub. So I have worked that in.
Yeah.
I wake up earlier every morning, so I can do that. That's one thing I've incorporated in. But it's like I'm a really affectionate person, so I really like hugs. But I said try to get a hug a day.
Yeah.
It's on my list.
Yeah.
And sing more often. I enjoy singing, but I don't do it very often anymore. So that was one of those.
You could be that crazy lady singing in your car.
And entertaining. I really like to entertain, like having people over for dinner and stuff like that. And that is something I do more regularly.
Yeah, so this is it. I find like when I make time for those things regularly and I schedule them in, then they have, for me, there's more likelihood that it's going to happen. I'm less spontaneous, but I know now I'm not going a whole year being like, I haven't seen my friends or I haven't had a chance to entertain. So kind of like seeing, like, okay, I want that hug a day. How can I incorporate that? And touch is so important, you know? Like if you feel like you need touch but you're not getting it. I know a friend of mine and I, we both part of the swing dance community. And the first time that I went to swing dance, I had been single for many, many years, and I have my kids, but I hadn't realized like how different it is to be touched. And we go to swing dance once a week, and or at least I haven't been in a while, but like that was the first time that I actually experienced touch. Again, you know, that was very like non-threatening. It was just a 3-minute hug, dancing. You dance it out and you're done, you know? And massage is another great way to get that feeling. So it's recognizing like what it is that ignites you, and then instead of thinking like, oh, I don't know how to get it, figure out how to get it, make it regular, and then use that as like, that's your prescription. But what we're doing is we're writing a script. We're writing a prescription for our own health, our own self-care, our own self-love that just belongs to us, and it's very specific to us, and it's something that we can control. And I think it's so powerful to be able to have that knowledge of what makes you happy, because it's not, your list is going to be totally different from anybody else's. So thanks for sharing those. Who else? Okay, go ahead.
I guess the necessary follow-up is swing dancing.
Swing dancing, it's the best ever. It's the best thing ever.
Swing dancing, fixing broken code, finishing projects that I abandoned.
Yes.
Belting out Broadway show tunes that are far outside my control.
Also, the crazy person in his car singing. I love, the reason why I mentioned being in your car singing is one of the things I noticed when I was doing this list is I'm like, well, I don't have time to do all these things, but they don't have to be everyday things. They can be once a week things, or you can do what I like to call batching, So like you said, you're reading in the tub, so that's 2 awesome things happening at one time. And like I will write my gratitude list while I'm in the bathtub, or listen to a story that for the book club. Like I was feeling like I was not having enough female connection with friends, so I joined a book club. And I'm like, when am I going to ever read a book? Because it was really hard to read a book after my head injury. And I read my first book in August. It was awesome. Thanks. But honestly, I'm an Audible person. So I love to listen to books, and I listen for 15 minutes or half an hour before I go to sleep. And so it's kind of learning like how to batch the things that I listen while I'm cleaning, putting the dishes away. So instead of thinking I can never get all this done, it's like, how can I do it with something else, mix it together, and still gain that thing that I love, and not lose that connection that I was looking for. So who else would like to share? If anybody else? Oh, yes.
So as a military spouse who has to move every once in a while, I have learned to really practice these when I'm in a new city, which I am right now. But my cat makes me embarrassingly happy. I have a dog who makes me a little bit less happy, but still embarrassingly. Rewatching my favorite movies, wearing comfortable clothing, tea, talking on the phone with my mom, burning candles makes me really happy, especially when there's scents that remind me of certain things or people. And then very similar ones to other people who have shared.
I love all of those. You mentioned tea. On my phone at 10 o'clock, there's an alarm, and it says, tea! Just so that I remember, because like I won't remember, and then like a whole period of time will go by, and I'm like, I'm missing something, and it's those things that I love. So I just want to inspire you to make your happy list, to go through and to create the things that help you love yourself and take care of yourself. Because if that's the biggest superpower that you can have or that you can cultivate, and it's something that you can give yourself. You don't need to be hit by lightning or to have somebody give it to you. And it takes a while. There's a lot of I don't know. I think for some people, I'll ask who in a room feels that they have like a pretty good sense of self-love, and there's a few hands that pop up, but there's just a few, So it's really humbling. It's humbling. It's humbling in many ways to know that like we're not the only ones that are struggling with that, and it's also really exciting to know that there are ways to gain and to build that self-love muscle. We just got to work it. Yeah, and I mean everything that I'm doing, all these superpowers that I'm honing, they're really just to feel better on a daily basis. If I gotta be here, and I do gotta be here, I want to enjoy my time here, and that's my goal. So, thank you.